What makes California Bioenergy stand out from its competition? We efficiently build quality dairy digesters while keeping the interests of our dairy partners at the forefront. This formula has resulted in the successful completion of 86 projects across the U.S. Interested in being a part of the next 86? Check out calbioenergy.com. That's CALBIOENERGY.com.
Welcome to the Progressive Dairy Podcast. I'm your host, Kimmi Devaney, and today we are diving into a number of different financial topics that you'll definitely want to tune in for as we finish out 2025 and head into 2026. Joining me today is Brad Guse from BMO. Many of you will remember he was on our podcast just a few months ago. So Brad, welcome back to the Progressive Dairy Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. It's
Absolutely.
good to be here.
Absolutely. So just in case anyone didn't hear your last episode that you did with us, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your background, your career, and what you do at BMO?
Sure. I work for BMO. We are the fourth largest ag bank in the United States. We fund a lot of different projects in the agriculture space, production ag space especially. I spend a lot of time, everything east of the Rockies, mostly large dairy is what I deal with. Our team covers all different segments of agriculture, but that's kind of my specialty, is the large dairy side.
So what are you hearing from dairy producers right now across the country? What's going well for them, and where do you see many of them struggling?
Well, right now, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, with what's happened in the marketplace in the last couple of days and weeks, the margins have gotten skinnier. Interestingly enough, though, when you look at the dairy margin coverage tool, if you use that from USDA and use DMC, that tool gives you kind of the idea of what income over feed cost is. Margins are staying pretty persistent when you look at margin over feed cost. Now, we could argue whether or not USDA's formula is accurate 100% or not in that DMC product, but at the end of the day, directionally is correct. And we lost about 25 cents in the last week. So the margins are tightening up. It's interesting, though, and this is the reality, right, of what's going on right now in the world of dairy, is that beef on dairy, right? So when you look at that, that's making that break even. If you add that in, that break even cost of production is probably as low as it's been in 2 years. Thanks to the value of those beef calves that they're selling and the added value in the carcass of the cull cows.
So speaking of beef on dairy, that's just one of the many ways that producers are diversifying their revenue streams these days. So let's dive into a little bit the economics of diversification and what you guys are seeing with that. Where are people spending the extra cash that they're getting from beef on dairy and other diversified revenue streams?
Well, right now, I think, when you look at the dairy side, it's part of the overall profits, right? So when you look at it, you're seeing the numbers I've heard have been all over the board, right? So, but when you think about it, right, a bull calf, not that long ago, you almost had to pay to take them to market because they were not worth anything, and now you're getting $1,000 or more for those day-old calves on the beef side. It's changing a lot of decision making on the farm as far as how they're handling those cows, and that's partly what's driving this lower milk prices, because the herd has grown because we've kept cows longer, right? And so that's starting to drive that margin down. But the diversified side of it is it's $2.50 a hundredweight for a dairy producer. Mm-hmm. So it's a great profit center right now, which wasn't there before. When you start thinking about vertical integration in the beef industry, I think that beef on dairy is probably part of the solution when you start looking at that in the long run. And it's bringing revenue. And so where are they investing it? I hope they're investing it in some good risk management, because nothing lasts forever. We're already seeing it in the dairy market side, right? So I hope they're investing it into some risk management things. I think that there's a lot of really interesting technology that's being explored. And so it's smart investments in things that help improve efficiency and drive cost of production even lower.
So we're going to talk about the important aspects of our risk management plan in just a few minutes. But before we get to that, I really want to dive into some of your favorite terms from the ag lending school that you and Kevin Bernhardt teach. So one of those that you've mentioned to me several times is earns and turns, and it means different things for smaller producers versus larger producers. So what does that mean for each of those types of farms?
Yeah, when you say, it's actually a term that I heard first at the National Ag Bankers Conference, and there's a lot of great economists around the U.S. Dr. Cole, Freddie Bernhardt. There's just so many good people that are out there that know so much. And I used to listen to all these guys, but one of the guys that was Mike Bolge out of Purdue, and he always talked about earns and turns. And if you ever heard him say it, it'd stick in your brain, because it's the way he says it is it's all about earns and turns, and it's not just pounds of milk, it's how many pounds of milk, right? So it's not the price, it's both yields. So the combination of the two is what drives your value chain, right? So it's earns and turns. Well, but when you look at it, when I talk about it in the ag lending school, it's kind of one of those things where we talk about earns and turns, and we talk about there's a difference between the guy that is focused on turns versus the guy that's focused on earns, right? A smaller producer, in order to keep the revenue numbers high as they can, typically looks to diversification and doing things at value add, those kinds of things, to increase the earns. So it's all about how much they earn on a per hundredweight basis. Whereas you look at a large producer, and let's face it, milk is a commodity business, right?
Yep.
So when you look at that commodity business, it favors typically the turns. And so when you look at it, it's a commoditized industry. And so it's the turn side of it. So it's the efficiency of how many turns you can get. So that's driving the expansion talk and what's happening on the expansion and the vertical integration model. So when you look at that, it's really about turns. And so I think you got to think about how do you align yourself in that. So as a producer, so a smaller producer may need to think about, in Wisconsin, I mean, it's perfect in Wisconsin, I think. Great people had some really cool insights a long time before I came into this industry about focusing on specialty cheese in Wisconsin. Specialty cheese is about earns. If you put it in those terms, it's about earns. It's about we're making more money per pound of cheese because we're making something that is special, right?
Yep.
And so it's about earns. Whereas you look at the commodity side of it, where we're producing cheddar and mozzarella, and to a certain extent, Parm has already become commoditized to a certain extent, right? So when you start getting into those things, that's about turns, and those are those big, efficient plants that you see coming online all the time. And it's hard to compete with those as a small cheesemaker making cheddar, right? So it's earns and turns, and I think the dairy is that same side of it. And so if you're a small producer, you may want to think about where do you align yourself. You may want to align yourself with the guy that's looking at the earn side on who you sell your milk to. And if you're a large commodity guy, your model fits large commodity. And so that's probably where you align thought processes and everything else. And so it's that volume side of it.
So tell me a little bit more about some of your other favorite sayings.
Oh gosh, we have all kinds of them. I mean, it's like I really like we do a lot of analytical work and stuff like that when we're doing that class and talking about how to analyze financials and stuff like that. But one of the things that we like to talk about is trends. And the term is actually Kevin's more than his mine, but it's not how close to the devil you are. It's which direction you're going. And it's really talking about the trends in your operation. Are you getting worse or are you getting better, right? And it doesn't matter what ratio it is. It's are you getting better or are you getting worse, right? Because we all want to get better. We know things in the market change and things happen and the volatility and everything cause some things to happen. But that's one of them that we like. Boy, I mean, they keep telling me I need to write a book about all the things I say.
Absolutely,
but,
you should.
Kevin and I have a lot of things that we really enjoy talking about and having fun with and things like that. But yeah, that's one of them. I think that the trend one is probably the most popular one. Some of them I probably can't say, so I won't. But yeah, it's a lot of different things that we have. So.
Awesome. So you mentioned expansion just a few minutes ago. So let's touch on that a bit. So for producers that are thinking about expanding their operation in any way at this point, what are some things that they should be considering at this point?
Yeah, expansion's talk. I mean, honestly, we talk about expansion because right now, right, that income over feed cost is still telling you should be expanding.
Right.
I mean, that's what the margins tell you right now. They tell you should be expanding. Is that the right answer for every operation? No. But I really look to three things when I look at an expansion. I've been in this business I started in ag banking back in the early 80s, lived through the 80s, did dairy nutrition for 10 years, and then came back into this industry as an ag lender in the 90s. I've seen the expansions that happened in the late 90s and failed in 02 and 03. I saw all of that stuff happen. I saw some of that pain that happened in 2016 through 18 when we were, it's like wandering in the desert because nothing was happening. It was just the margins were flat and not going right for most people. But as we look at that, the three things that I find most common is, it's probably I would say working capital, right? That's probably number one on my list is working capital. And I mean real working capital. I don't mean feed that's in the bunker. Because feed in the bunker, it can turn to cash, but it takes a while to happen, right? I'm talking about real liquidity. I'm talking about cash in the bank, line availability, and I'm talking about prepaid balances. I'm talking about stuff that you can turn to cash tomorrow. Not next week, not 2 weeks from now, tomorrow. Because Murphy happens in every expansion I've been in. And it is hard, and so having that is important, is having that working capital to get through that phase. The second thing that I really look for is a team, a consulting team around the operation. When construction is happening, what I see happen so many times is, as a producer, you're so focused on the cows every day, you're focused on all the animals, getting the job done and getting the work done, but who's minding the cash register, so to speak, right? So I want to make sure that somebody's minding the store when all this stuff and all this chaos is going on. When you're worried about the building project, I want somebody that's actually looking at the checkbook and going, we're still doing okay, right? So having a consultant, whether that be a dairy consultant or a business consultant or a CPA or somebody like that, I want somebody like that on your team that's a part of that process, because it just seems like we know Murphy's going to happen. I want somebody that's keeping an eye out for that. And then the third thing that we've talked about it on every operation, to be honest, and that's risk management. You can't go into it, really when you think about a risk management plan, I said liquidity or working capital up front. Well, risk management is the tool that you use to defend your working capital position. I look at it as that first line of defense to helping you make sure that your working capital doesn't disappear.
So that leads perfectly into what we're going to talk about next, which was going to be the key aspects of a risk management plan. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
It's volatility is real. I mean, it's crazy.
And you just wrote an article about that.
Yeah, I did, and it should be it's actually out on the website already, so it should be in, I don't know if it's going to hit print or not, but I know it's in the website. Very soon? All right, so cool. Anyway, that article is coming out, but volatility is one of those things that's real, and it's not going away. So as you look at that, it's really about consistency. You can't be in the game today and not tomorrow. You need to be into risk management every single day, defending your balance sheet and doing that. And when I talk about risk management, I'm not just talking about, the first dollar should be spent on managing your risk when it comes to your milk price, because that's the most volatile thing we have, right? So I think you got to spend your first dollar there. The second thing you got to look at is probably what your next most expensive thing on the farm is your feed cost, right? So then you should be defending your feed costs. Then obviously, I think you need to defend your risk management on your interest rates. I think you need to look at that as well and use different tools that are available, whether it be hedging or long-term fixed rates, doing all kinds of things to manage your interest rate risk as well. Those are really the big three. And then going from there, then there's a lot more that goes with I'm a holistic guy when it comes to risk management. It's life insurance, it's your insurance products, it's all those kinds of things are all part of your risk management plan. It's not just about your income statement. It's about protecting your balance sheet too. And so you need to think about all those kinds of things. So it's everything that goes along with that.
And we'll talk about interest rates in just a few minutes. But first, let's talk about advisory teams. So I know this is something that you recommend for pretty much all farms in some way.
Yeah.
You touched on it a little bit when we were talking about expansion considerations in terms of when you're making a big change to your operation, making sure you have the right people around you that can offer the right expertise. So, of course, these advisory teams are going to look different for different types of farms.
Absolutely.
So why don't we start with what is an advisory team and then dive into what it looks like for different types of farms.
Well, I see it actually being used in a couple of different ways when I look at most of my operations. There's a couple of different ones. One is like an outside advisory group that is made up of people that are not even part of the farm and not probably part of an allied industry even. They're people that are business people and stuff like that. That's on kind of the next level from my perspective. That's kind of that next level of advisory team. And that's somebody that's bringing a different set of ideas, a different set of business thought processes to the farm, which is really neat. The other one is the team meetings, which is usually it's the quarterly, where it's maybe the CPA, the attorney, it might be the feed guy, it might be the veterinarian and the banker all sitting down at the table and having a meeting on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, depending on what's going on. But having those meetings on a regular basis, and what they're doing is really looking at and everything on the farm holistically, and then driving in that same direction so that everybody knows, hey, here's our set of key goals, and we're all pushing towards that same set of goals. We don't have one person that's off in left field going, hey, we need to spend money here, when it's going, well, that's not going to get us that next 5 pounds of milk. This is. And so it's kind of that having that collaboration and having that team around you that kind of gives you that idea and keeps bringing ideas to the table on how do we get better.
So as the banker in that situation, what do you recommend to producers who don't have an advisory team now, but they're thinking about it and they're not sure how to make that a success? What have you seen work really well?
Yeah, there's a lot of good, interesting pieces and articles about peer groups and stuff like that too. But I mean, it's because I think there's room for all three, by the way.
Yeah.
I think there are all three different functions, whether it's that C-suite. When I talk about C-suite, that's where you're bringing in the CEOs from other companies and being a part of an advisory, outside advisory. There's the team meeting, is that really that tactical and that operational kind of look. And peers tend to be that really, I don't know. It's almost like an outside advisory board, but it's not. It's got a little bit different. It's not as focused on your operation as it is on everybody's operation.
And sharing what's working, what's not.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a little bit different, and each one of them has their place when it comes to the farm side of it. In my opinion, farm business side of it. But when we go into, if you're going to start one, I think it's important to sit down and think about what are, number one, what are your values? What do you value as a producer? Because you don't want people with differing values necessarily on your advisory team.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not of the same value system, it's really hard to be constructive together.
Yeah,
and so it's make sure that you understand what your values are. So I think you have to be introspective first and look at what your values are. Look at what you want to get out of it, and probably sit down with an agenda and go, here's what I want to get out of these meetings. And set a kind of your own agenda. And when you get to that, you probably go, yep, I need this guy, and this guy, or this gal, and this gal, and this gal at this meeting. And you'll probably find that pretty fast.
With the completion of our 86th Dairy Digester project, California Bioenergy is without a doubt one of the leading developers of anaerobic digesters for dairy farms in the United States. Since 2006, CalBio has been forming successful partnerships with dairy farmers to create digesters that are built to last. Our CalBio team has the expertise to help lead you through the entire development process, from project design and engineering to credit generation and the day-to-day operations. With subsidiaries in the Northwest, Midwest, and Southwest, CalBio is ready to partner with dairy farmers across the country. Learn more at calbioenergy.com. That's CalBioEnergy.com.
So let's now pivot a little bit and talk about other profitability strategies, because of course that's something that's on a lot of people's minds as we head into 2026.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend as a banker? What are you seeing that's working, and what do you think could work well?
We know, it's always the old saying, right? Make hay while the sun shines. That's one of my mom's old sayings that she used to say to me. Another one of my sayings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make hay while the sun shines.
You need to write a book.
It's funny because I glean them from everybody. But make hay while the sun shines. It's really about when we're in this, when we're in a good margin period, you need to be working to build that working capital up,
Mm-hmm.
right? And keep building that liquidity so that you've got it. I mean, I used to think, that $500 a cow to $1,000 a cow is the right number. I think it's higher than that, and it continues to get higher. And it's because of the increase in volatility and the quick moves that the market's making. I think you need more in the form of that. So, and that gives you the opportunity when everything else is going down, you've got some cash to be able to, I've seen guys make great investments when the markets fall and all of a sudden a tractor is cheap, or a capital item, and they're able to use cash to actually go buy that in that time frame and make something happen fast, or buy the neighbor's operation because nobody else has any money, right? Mm-hmm. It's one of those things where it's important you can control decisions. But from a purely profitability standpoint, it is right now. Obviously the beef on dairy conversation. It's the value of the uterus. I don't know how better to put it. It's just the decisions that are being made right now on farms, and what's driving some of this larger dairy herd is the fact that we're going through and not culling calves. One of my operations said that their cull rate in the first 120 days of lactation has essentially gone down to zero because they're keeping everything and putting a calf in it, because that calf, I can keep them alive for 270 days to get a calf out of them. That's worth something today, right? So it's the value of that uterus, and they're keeping them around, and so it may be it's adding revenue to the bottom line, but it's also adding cows to the herd, right? Mm-hmm. But right now, with the income over feed costs, we can afford to. So it's a pretty good position to be in right now. So that's one of the, obviously beef on dairy has changed a little bit in the fact that I see kind of two things happening right now. I see a few heifers being kept back on the beef herd side right now. So when you look at the beef herd itself, you're starting to see some rebuild on that side happen. Very, very small, but it's noticeable. And we're starting to see a little bit of in the past I used to say I can go buy a replacement if I need to. Well, today the replacement cost is so high that you can't really, you can grow them cheaper than you can buy them typically. Yeah. And so right now. And so from that perspective, you're starting to see some guys retain some heifers just to make sure that they're not impacting the profitability on that. Risk management, again, get back into the risk management thing. Right now, the guys that are really making the smart moves, I don't know where the market's going. Nobody does, right? We all have our guesses with what's happening on the fundamentals, but it feels to me like we're at the bottom of the markets. I always do I wish I had a blackboard so I could draw pictures because I like that, but it's a curve, a bell-shaped curve, mm-hmm. right? The typical probability. I always ask producers, where are we at on that probability curve of price possibilities right now for milk? Well, we're starting to go down the line on the price possibilities for milk. We're below average. It's starting to get to that level right now, especially when we start getting into that $16 mm-hmm. range right now, yeah. At least recent history. So there's probably more upside potential than there is downside, right? When you start talking about diesel fuel, where's that? Where are we at in that right now from that standpoint? Fertilizer costs. I think depending on what happens on the tariff side, we could see fertilizer costs climb quite a bit. That could be scary to me. So mm-hmm. let's manage that. Let's think about what's happening in the grain markets right now. It just feels like we're closer to the bottom on corn and protein. So if you're buying those things, I think you ought to be doing some risk management planning right now on that.
Yeah, so when we look towards 2026, which is just a couple months away, this year's flown by, what are you seeing with interest rates as we wrap up the last few months of 2025?
It changes every day, I think. It's been, when you talk about volatility in the dairy market and feed markets and all those kinds of things, interest rates has not been immune to it. Mm-hmm. Every time a tweet goes out, we get something new, right? And right. So, and the FOMC met not that long ago, and interest rates dropped a quarter, right? The short-term interest rates. Now, understand that short-term interest rates is the Fed cost funds. What really drives the market is supply and demand, mm-hmm. just like any other market when right. it starts coming to interest rates, right? So, but when we look at that supply and demand, by dropping rates, we're hoping to increase investment. That's what we're hoping, right? So that's what we're trying to do is increase investment. And so what does that do? That also in turn impacts long-term rates to a certain extent because it's trying to free up that money. Right now, when you look at it, supply and demand, longer-term rates are cheaper than short-term rates yet. So when you look at that, that's telling us that we expect the markets to go down right now. We expect short-term rates to continue to fall. I've heard everything from another 0.5% this year to, well, maybe not. And it's all trying to balance this macroeconomics of, the dual mandate of the Fed, which is to manage employment and then also manage inflation. Well, inflation has been a little sticky in the U.S. and tariffs aren't helping. And then you take a look at the job side. The jobs report is what really took the 0.25% out of the market. So, and it's still looking that way. It's like we're kind of balancing that. The Fed has signaled a little bit more likelihood that it's going to go down in the next couple of meetings. I'm in a wait and see mode, but I would be looking at. I think the odds are, in my mind, the odds right now are that rates are going to go down. More.
So is there anything that happened over the last year, especially in 2025, that you didn't see coming, that you didn't predict a year ago?
Well, honestly, I didn't think this beef price would stay here this long. I mean, you think about the beef cycle, it's usually 10 years. What are we in, 13, 14? I mean, it's like, it's uncharted territory, and it really ties back to the resiliency of the consumer in the U.S. when you start thinking about it. It's what the U.S. consumer is willing to pay for beef in the grocery store. It's just it is astounding to me. I mean, I love a steak just as much as anybody else, but I don't know. It's starting to get up to my threshold where I'm starting to go, well, but it's interesting. I mean, it goes back a little bit to some of the consumer dynamics too. I mean, what's happened with it, but when it comes to people are willing to pay that in a grocery store because they're not buying that steak at the store. In COVID, they learned how to cook steaks on their grill.
Yep.
And they went, boy, I can make a steak better than that steakhouse can.
For a lot cheaper.
For a lot cheaper, exactly. And so the consumer is actually doing that a lot more. And it's just, so it's really interesting data. But I mean, it's fun to see, and the quality of our beef has never been better. I mean, you just think about it, the quality of our animals, it's amazing. Tastes great, and yeah, I'll eat a steak every day.
Amen to
if
that.
I could, but my waistline wouldn't. I can't eat that much, even though I eat a lot of protein. But yeah,
So in the past year, you wrote an article that was really popular, basically about what keeps ag bankers up at night. And I asked you this question the last time we talked on the podcast, but I think your answer might have changed a little bit. So I'm going to ask you again. Yeah. So what's keeping you up at night these days, Brad?
It's volatility. When you look at it, this volatility is crazy, and I think that it's going to get worse. I'm concerned about hot markets, and so that keeps me awake at night a little bit. Anytime we get too many speculators in a market, so I call them silk suits. Anytime there's too many silk suits in the room, get nervous. And it feels like there's a lot of silk suits in the room right now when it comes to the markets on dairy and on beef. It just feels like there's too much in there. The reason I get scared is because when they get a signal that the market is turning on them, they run for the doors, and they don't care who gets hurt in the process. They run for the doors, and when that happens. Because the markets don't care whether you make money or you lose money, right? And so they run for the doors and the market falls, and that's going to be scary. The other one that's interesting, and I guess there's been a lot of articles in the popular press about it and stuff like that, but what's happening in the South, Mid-South, and Southeast right now, when you look at the crop side, is scary to me right now. We're starting to see some of the early stages of a pretty drastic, I don't know what to call it, but it's going to drive more consolidation because of the losses that are happening in those row crop, whether it be cotton, rice. You look across the spectrum on what can you grow right now and actually make money growing. It's getting pretty thin on what's out there on how you can do that. Unfortunately, that region, the South and Southeast, the Mid-South, has had some weather issues, and so they're not getting the yields either. So you got compound low price with low yields, and now all of a sudden you had neither earns or turns, and now you are sucking air, and it's not good. And that worries me a little bit. I mean, you look at most of the data on land prices are holding steady relatively yet, but if land prices start to fall, that scares me, because you got to think about, that's kind of the underpinning of agriculture when you think about land values. I mean, that's kind of the old adage. Is another one of those sayings, right? If you get the dirt, you won't get hurt. As a banker, that's what it used to be.
Add that to your book.
Yeah, add that to the book. But it's if you've got the dirt, you won't get hurt, and that makes some sense when values are going up. But we all know values can go down. I mean, when you look back to the 80s, what happened to land values? Land values retraced to what they could cash flow at. If you look at what your land could cash flow growing corn at today, I will guarantee you it's lower than what you paid for it if you bought it in the last couple of years. It is not going to cash flow at today's corn prices. So that's scary to me. Because if land values start falling, then all of a sudden banks get nervous because we're losing our collateral pool. And if banks get nervous, then capital starts flowing out of agriculture instead of into agriculture, and that gets scarier. And it changes it. Right now, really, it's about supply and demand on land, right? There's plenty of demand yet for land, and there's not a huge supply of land on the market. What changes that? And that whole thing kind of keeps me up at night a little bit, because the 80s sucked. And it's not because of the money that got lost, it's because of the people that got hurt. It sucked because of the people that got hurt in that process. There was a lot of money that got lost too, but it was the people we lost.
Yeah, Grandpa talks about, or he's no longer with us, but he used to talk about the 80s, and I was born in the late 80s, so I don't remember that decade, but
there you go,
it was not
aging
good.
myself again, aren't I? But it's interesting. My grandfather had a small dairy farm, and I actually, when I graduated from college, talked to him about coming back to the farm and buying a small herd of cows and being a part and trying to do that. And we couldn't make it work. I couldn't get my grandfather. He said, "You need to go work someplace else." And that farm, so that farm never milked a cow again. I mean, it just was, the cows were gone before I graduated college, about 15 years actually before then. But I remember milking cows in that barn as a kid. So, I wanted to do that. I was that guy. But there's a whole generation of folks my age that didn't go into production agriculture because of what was going on at the time. We got told no, a lot of us.
Yeah. So on the flip side of that last question, what are you excited about, Brad?
Yeah,
what gets you out of bed in the morning, I should say.
Yeah, what gets me out of bed in the morning? My wife. She throws something at me.
Sounds right.
No, I actually do. I actually get up a lot. I do Ironman. I do triathlons and do a lot of crazy athletic stuff on that. You wouldn't know that about me, but that's one of the things that I enjoy doing is endurance athletics. And do it with I do it with some disabled kids as well. So my team Triumph and some folks and Shared Blessings are my people from that standpoint. So I've done a lot of crazy things, but it feeds right into I'm powered by dairy. And I'm powered by dairy when I do those exercises because of the protein. It's the whey protein and the nutraceuticals. And I think that still is exciting to me. It's exciting on where our industry is going, on what's there for protein. I mean, we've got all this diet drugs and all that kind of stuff coming on, and to manage that, it's the demand for protein just keeps ramping up. So I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about the people. I mean, all you got to do is, we're at World Dairy Expo, right?
Yeah.
We're at World Dairy Expo, and today is FFA Day, I swear. And it's like every FFA chapter in the States here. And
I met some kids from Iowa.
Yeah,
so
in Iowa and otherwise. So
everywhere.
there's people from all over the world that come here that are, but it's looking at those kids and the wonder in their eyes and the excitement in their face when they're talking to you about what they want to do when they get older, and how they do it. I mean, it reminds me of me when I was a kid, right? And it's just that enthusiasm for the industry, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about it. There's room for everybody in this industry. Yeah, there's going to be, I think, the earns and turns model is going to continue. We're going to see continued consolidation. I don't see that stopping, and it's going to mean some different things. But there's room for every size operation. I mean, we've got Amish farms with 10 cows in Clark County. There's room for everybody in this, as long as you can do it profitably and do that. And so I'm excited about what this industry has ahead.
So along those lines, what are some of the greatest opportunities that you see for dairy farmers right now?
Oh, wow.
Especially from a financial standpoint as a banker.
It's interesting. The profitability in the industry is there, right now. So I think that it's telling you to expand. So the challenge is right now, construction costs are high. So the opportunities are going to be, as this consolidation happens, is who is that mid-sized farm that could be expandable, that's getting squeezed in that margin crunch, that isn't doing either earns or turns, is in that middle ground that's getting squeezed, right? So finding those and expanding by acquisition as opposed to expanding by building. So I see that as being some opportunity. It's amazing to me, the resiliency of the dairy farmer through all the cycles has always amazed me. But as we look at what's going on right now, the expansion by acquisition, it's changing management. And and we have the management capacity to do a lot more than what we do so on our farm every day. There's more to life than outside of the dooryard. I think it's going to be interesting to see how on that smaller side, of the value add side, what new enterprises spring up where, and what does some kid that comes home from college go, you know what, we ought to try this, and they come up with an idea, and I think it's going to be really neat to see how all that happens.
So you talked about a lot of things today, Brad, that producers should keep in mind as we head into 2026. Is there anything else that maybe we didn't talk about, or maybe we touched on that you want to elaborate on further to keep top of mind for producers?
It's just, I can't, I'm the guy that preaches it every time you talk to me, but it's risk management. I mean, it is, and holistic risk management, like I said, not just looking at the markets. Let's look at your whole farm. Let's manage all the risks on your farm and think about that, because, it is important to manage that, to preserve the family wealth you've created. And then in that process, as you look forward to the next generation, I think you want to think about, how do I preserve that wealth, off the farm? I think it's too often the only retirement account somebody has is the farm. And I think we've got to look off the farm, and we've got to start thinking about that, because I don't think at today's land prices there's a place for somebody to enter on the young side. It's hard to get enough capital and repay that capital as a young farmer. I think that our older generation, to bring that next generation in, is not going to be able to cash in that 401k of their farm in order to survive their retirement. They're going to have to gift some of that in that process. And so how do they do that? So that's where I think you got to start early and start preserving some of that wealth off the farm early. We're in good times, making hay while the sun shines. Let's stow some of that away off the farm. That's not, 401k, retirement account. Good choice.
Good advice. So anything else to add before we dive into our rapid fire questions?
No, thanks for being at World Dairy Expo and talking to me. I just love being here, and it's always one of my favorite times of the year, and see and catch up with so many great people. And so it's just fun to catch up with everybody from around the U.S. and around the industry.
So my first rapid fire question for you today, Brad, is right along those lines. We're at World Dairy Expo. So what is your favorite thing about World Dairy Expo?
The cows. I love seeing all the people, don't get me wrong. I love all the people, but I think I said it in the last podcast, and kind of one of those things people wouldn't think about me, but I really enjoy looking at the cows. I love pretty cows, and it's fun to walk the barns, and it's fun to, see a couple of classes when I can get a chance to. I like to grab somebody and just go sit down and watch a little while. It's always fun to me. I like good looking cows. If we're, I don't know, one of my friends, friends of mine, he said to me, if we're going to milk cows, it might as well be pretty ones.
Exactly.
And so I totally wholeheartedly agree with him. And I know what time of day that group of cows goes to the parlor. So if I'm having a really bad week, I'll go find that group of cows, because I like watching those pretty cows walk to the parlor.
Yeah. So next question's perfect from that one is, what's your favorite breed of dairy cow?
I'm a Holstein guy. Going way back to the days when I was selling feed and doing feed consulting in Fond du Lac County, where there was a lot of registered classified Holsteins, and I just really enjoy seeing those cows and see where that breed is gone. It's been really fun, and the genetic progress we've made in just the last 2 years, 3 years, is just phenomenal. So.
You and I have talked about different podcasts quite a bit because we both love listening to podcasts. So what is your favorite non-dairy podcast, Brad?
I've actually got really two that I'm listening to a lot. It's a Feel Good Life. It's Jennifer James. She is a rice and bean and corn grower in Arkansas. And she is a really, really smart lady. And I really enjoy talking to her all the time. But her podcast is really about lots of different things about a row crop operation. But she spends more time talking about the soft issues, which is really about the family and how do things like that go on. And she's also a great advocate for our industry, so I like listening to her because she's a friend too. So as well, and then there's a book out there that Craig Grossi wrote, and Craig is Craig and Fred, and it's a book about a dog that he brought back from Afghanistan, and so he's got a stubbornly positive podcast, which is it's just him and his better half. Nora, she'll love that I gave her a shout out for being the better half. But Craig and Nora do a great little podcast where they talk about different things, and they take on some pretty tough issues sometimes too, but grief, all kinds of stuff, but. Being positive is the real message of their podcast, and so I really enjoy that one. Just in the face of everything we face, it's easy to get down, and it's thinking about being positive and being stubbornly positive in those times when you really need to dig deep. I think that's something that we see in every one of our farmers is they dig deep when they have to, and I think that's just that resilience, and everything you see on a farm ties back to that a little bit. And plus, Craig and Nora are cool people, so it's kind of fun.
Yeah, great people. Awesome. So next question is, what do you do for fun? You kind of answered this a little bit earlier, but...
I've got really two things, right? And everybody knows it. I think most people that know me, there's two things I do, right? It's I do the endurance athletics. I like that. I work out a fair amount, but as everybody knows, I've got ADHD. I'm like it's just. If you've ever watched the movie Up and you saw Doug and Doug goes squirrel, that's me. I'm the guy that chases squirrels. So I do that. And so I'm that guy. Exercise helps me with that. And so if I'm not exercising, I notice it. So I do a lot of exercise just to help keep my brain functioning the way it needs to. And then the second thing that I really do, my wife and I are avid horse riders, and we spend our summers as much as possible spending weekends riding horse. And we've traveled all over with the horses. This summer we were in the Badlands and spent some time out in the Badlands, and we've done Idaho. So I've been out in your neck of the woods a little bit. Done Idaho. I've done Yellowstone. We've done the Tetons. We've done all that kind of stuff, and it's our hobby, and totally love doing that. So
awesome. So last question for you today, Brad, is going to be a familiar one for you. It's how I end every one of my episodes. Is what are you most excited about regarding the future of the dairy industry?
I'm just thinking the opportunities that are ahead, right? I just really think that, it might be some short-term demand challenges right now. I mean, it's really not a demand issue, to be honest, right now. It's a supply issue. We've got a little bit of an oversupply going on right now because we've grown the herd. And so that's why you're seeing the price go down. But margin-wise, I'm excited about it for the future. It's nature's perfect food, right? And so... I just see as we continue to look at nutraceuticals and everything else that are coming at us, and how do we go from a medical system that is treating problems to a medical system that is preventing problems. As we do that, I just see nutraceuticals being a bigger and bigger part of it, and the consumer willing to pay for that. I think those are the two key things, and I think that's exciting. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that happens, and how which kid in high school right now is going to develop that one partition of milk that makes the biggest difference to somebody's health. It's going to be cool. I just think
might be one of those FFA students.
It might be one of those kids we walk around today. Absolutely.
You never know. So many opportunities.
So
awesome. Well, Brad, thank you again for joining me on this episode of the Progressive Dairy Podcast. Always great to visit with you, and everything that you shared, I think there's something, I say this a lot, but there's literally something for everybody, especially when it comes to the profitability side of things. Good reminders about risk management and how people need to really keep that top of mind. And then I think it's always a good reminder to diversify revenue streams. And
yeah, always keep looking, right? Look for opportunities every day.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Brad.
Thank you.
This is Kimmi Devaney for the Progressive Dairy Podcast. We hope these last few minutes have given you a useful tip or idea to consider on your farm. Listen to future episodes of this podcast at your preferred music store by searching for and following the Progressive Dairy Podcast. And if you like the show, be sure to leave a comment for us. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Progressive Dairy Podcast.